Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Karen Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 City Council meeting of September 6, 2017. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith.
I am here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
Thank you and welcome. We're glad that you're all here engaging in the civic process. And we have some students here. CSUB government class. Would you raise your hands? Somebody's here. Welcome wherever you are. Bakersfield College political science class students. Welcome. Boy Scouts, we have Troop 484. Welcome here. And Boy Scouts Troop 415. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and we are delighted that you are involved at this early stage in your life. At this time, Pastor Leonard Mancini from Bakersfield Living Word Foursquare Church will offer the invocation. Pastor, thank you so much for all your service to the community, all the outreach that your church does. And then following the invocation, Flint Sheffield will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flint is a senior at Liberty High School, and he serves on our Youth Commission. Thank you so much for your service. So at this time, would you all please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge?
Madam Mayor, council members, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we come before you today with grateful hearts, for this is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. I pray for an outpouring of your Spirit. I pray that your Holy Spirit take charge of this meeting today. I pray for a special blessing upon Mayor Go. May you give her a fresh anointing today. May you refresh her spirit as she navigates the needs of the people of the city of Bakersfield. I pray for each and every one of these council members as they dedicate their lives to public service. May you bring a fresh blessing and a fresh anointing upon them today, my God. Father God, we love you and we give you all the honor, Father, and I ask you to just take charge of this meeting, Father, and continue to bless this wonderful city of ours. We pray for your will and only your will to be done. In Jesus' mighty name, amen and amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Flint?
Please place your right hand over your heart. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I'm assuming that this is your family, so thank you so much for all of your support. And Pastor, you also brought a guest. Thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to stay, or if you need to leave, feel free to do so. Here are a few guidelines just to help us with our meeting. We request that you turn all your cell phones off, and in keeping with council policy, council members aren't allowed to send or receive electronic communications during the meeting. We'd ask you to be courteous in the use of cameras and videos. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of the meeting, but it isn't allowed during other times of the meeting. And for safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chambers. And we thank you so much for your cooperation. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first item?
Under presentations, we have a proclamation to Keith Bryce, the 2017 John Brock Community Service Award recipient, declaring September 7th, 2017, Keith Bryce Day.
Looking for you. It's like, where is he? Where's the man? Well, Keith Bryce, we see your name all over the place, and it is just a joy. You know, I think you don't really even need an introduction because you're so active in our community. For you to receive the recognition of the John Brock Award is just a reflection of who you are. Such a prestigious award, and we are honored to be able to proclaim the following. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield, California, has officially proclaimed September 7th, 2017 as Keith Bryce Day in our city in recognition of his selection as the 2017 recipient of the John Brock Award for Community Service and honoring his dedication to serving the Bakersfield and Kern County communities as President CEO of Mid-State Development Corporation, Vice President at Community First Bank, California Republic Bank, and Sanwa Bank, in recognition of his more than 34 years of community service, including chairperson of the Board of Directors for the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce, the Kern County United Way, and the Kern Community Foundation, in recognition of his tenure as president of the Kiwanis Clubs of South and Southeast Bakersfield, in recognition of his leadership abilities demonstrated by his membership on the Board of Directors of the Westminster Presbyterian Church Foundation, the Kern Economic Development Corporation, Kern County Special Olympics, Junior Achievement of Bakersfield, and Mid-State Development Corporation, and in recognition of the exceptional contributions he has made to improving the quality of life in the Bakersfield community. We are so honored to be able to present this to you, Mr. Bryce.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. We'd love you to say a few words, and tomorrow night you can come out and recognize him.
Mayor, thank you. It seems like I've just been around a long time. That's what it is in age, and I appreciate the honor. I've been on the other end in giving these awards to the John Brock recipients, so I'm very proud and humbled to receive it. So thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
Okay. All right.
Next item, please.
Presentation of a proclamation to K.C. the Bull and Kern County Fair Chief Executive Officer Mike Alcott, declaring September 20th, 2017 through October 1st, 2017, Kern County Fair Days.
I don't know that this is going to work without Casey.
I know, he's sick
Oh,
today.
Casey, I was looking around for him. Poor Casey is sick today, but we're so glad to have you here, Mike. And the Kern County Fair is a gem of our community. There are so many people who are involved in it. Our young people have such tremendous opportunities, and it is my honor. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield, California, has officially proclaimed September 20th to October 1st, 2017 as Kern County Fair Days in our city in honor of the 92nd annual Great Kern County Fair in recognition of the time-honored American festival that is a county fair, in recognition of the hundreds of thousands of anticipated visitors who will pass through its gates over this 10-day span to celebrate the bounty of Kern County and the talents of its residents in this autumn tradition, in recognition of the opportunity the event offers families to spend time together, in recognition of the largest junior livestock county fair exhibits in the United States, at least one of the largest, and in recognition of the great Kern County Fair, that it remains the best in the West. It's my honor to present this proclamation to you, Mr. Alcott.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Go, and thank you, City Council. We're really looking forward to a great fair this year. We had about 425,000 people attend last year. We're expecting more this year. Our entertainment is really a little bit higher than last year, spending a little bit more money, and we're getting Facebook feeds that everything is going to be huge with attendance out there. Lots of new food, lots of new fried foods, lots of new exhibits. We have stingray exhibits with no barbed tails. You can pet those stingrays. And we have Tonka the dragon. We have all kinds of things for the kids. So please come out, be my guest out there. I hope you'll come out and join us. It's going to be great, and it's good seeing Karen Go here again because she's my BHS alumni friend here and USC. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public statements.
At this time, we'll receive public statements. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. If you are going to speak, would you just come forward? That helps us just save time, and just sit in the first rows. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk, and she'll give copies to the council. And we'd ask you to avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting. We're very interested and concerned with your issues, but due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Madam Clerk, please call the first public speaker.
Mayor, we have received 5 speaker cards this evening. Each speaker is speaking on a separate subject. The first speaker is Mike Morris, District Manager for Cal Water, regarding not raising rates for Cal Water customers.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. As you know, my name is Mike Morris, and I am the District Manager for Cal Water's Bakersfield District. Unfortunately, some incorrect information began spreading on social media about the city's proposed water rate increase, which is needed to ensure the city is able to comply with the new water quality regulations adopted by the state. I would just like to clarify that the proposed rate increase will not only affect those residents, will only affect those residents that are served by the city's water system, which primarily includes the western portion of Bakersfield. Residents that are served by Cal Water System will not be affected by this particular rate increase. We've placed a map on our website that enables residents to easily determine which of the 2 water systems they are served by. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Councilmember Rivera, you have a comment.
I just want to make it clear that Cal Water has raised rates, and they've done so quite substantially over the last few years. So I want to make sure you don't get away scot-free while the city of Bakersfield's managed to do it pretty low for a while. But I appreciate you coming by and clarifying that for us.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Maeve Nutter, regarding an invitation to the City Council.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Maeve Nutter. I know it's kind of unusual, but if you're a country music fan and the sound of the Bakersfield sound, you may know that Buck Owens was playing my records before we met, and he wanted to meet me. When he found out I was producing my own records, he was telling me that he had a record studio that he wanted me to come up and show him how I did it. And so I became part of his concerts around the world, and also a part of the TV show, the Buck Owens Ranch show. I'm also an actor. Some of you look like you may be old enough to remember things like Gunsmoke, High Chaparral, Bonanza, The Waltons, and I was the first bad guy Charlie's Angels ever caught. And I'm not telling you all this to be I'm blessed with all this, but I wanted to tell you because I'm here. I hate to disappoint somebody, but I'm here not to complain about anything. So I'm actually here to invite you to something, a world premiere of a film here in Bakersfield. Now, we have the Bakersfield Sound, which has done a lot for around the world, people knowing what Bakersfield is. And we had a TV show, maybe some of you will remember, called The Big Valley, which was about the San Joaquin Valley. And that helped us a little bit get to know and be known there as well. Lee Majors was the star of that. And Lee Majors is also one of the stars of the movie that I'm telling you about right now. what's so unusual about this movie is that it's first being shown in local churches. And the reason for that is Hollywood now, I don't have to tell you if you've ever gone to the movie in the last few years, there's a lot of stuff that you don't want to take your kids to. Sometimes you go there and you say, I wish I wasn't here, because there's a lot of gory and nasty stuff on there. And as an actor, I can tell you I have actually said no to many offers to be a part of things that I just felt were immoral or something that I wouldn't take my kids to. So this movie company is called Church First Productions. So rather than go out into the world and take a chance on throwing something up on the billboard there and having people come see the movie, they actually show it in churches first. And half the ticket money stays with that church for anything that they want to do. So it's being done here in town. I better hurry up now. I do have invitations for each of you. I'd like your recommendations on other churches, perhaps. And if you like the movie, I know you will because it's family and reality and stuff, then you might recommend other places where it can be shown. It's going to be at the Christ Cathedral
Mr. Nutter, your
tomorrow
time's up,
night,
so go ahead.
starting at 7 o'clock, and tickets are $10. Half of it stays with the church.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and may I
Thank
pass
you.
out the
You
invitation?
can give it to the city clerk, and she'll distribute. Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next speaker, please.
John Wilson regarding downtown business owners' safety.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name is John Wilson. I'm a business owner at 2012 E Street between 20th and 21st. I've been in downtown area for many years, been in Bakersfield for 48 years as an engineer, surveyor, contractor. I gave the clerk several pictures of the event that happened April 3rd, and in that, there were thousands upon thousands of credit cards strewn about my property, along with IV needles and trash. I confronted the gentleman who was opening containers in the alley, called the police. He threw one of the containers at me. I followed him in the backyard. He looked at me and said, "You're calling the cops, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." He started after me. I drew my gun. And using a cell phone that we provide him, he took pictures of me holding him at bay until the police arrived. The police came, they looked, they left. The thousands upon thousands of credit cards were still there. The police technician came, and she and I helped bag them that were in the area, along with the IV needles, trash, other things, and those were taken to the police department. The police told me to get into my office and lock the door during this because I was on the phone when the gentleman confronted me. So I locked myself in my office while he roamed the property. Nothing was ever done to him, and I don't fault the police department. They did their job. The police tech did her job, did an excellent job helping me clean up. I called the city manager's office, and after 18 minutes on several holds, they dropped me. I called 2 city councilmen, and this is the one blew me off completely. He said, "Why are you calling me?" I explained to him that my councilman had recently passed away, and we're just calling to try and find some help. No help there. The other councilman did an excellent job. He and I chatted a little bit, but the only thing I got from that conversation was, that's the cost of doing business downtown, what I'm going through, and have been going through. The city has removed or helped remove a lot of the troublesome of the downtown area, and they forced them out to where I am. The last event was last week, and this is why I'm here. My ladies in my office sometimes do not come to the office when there's events happening. Last week, there's a gentleman taking a bath or a shower in my faucets, and he had a stiff-bladed knife. I called the police. The police got there in 17 minutes. And the reason why they got there so fast, because there had been a murder 2 blocks away using a knife, and they thought that gentleman may have been the person that may have been responsible. Couple of the ideas that were given to me, my daughter, who's a little more liberal than I am, and she's down in Los Angeles, she said, why don't you just buy those people Greyhound tickets to Los Angeles, the Mission District? They cost between $9 and $13. Maybe we can get a bit of them that way. It doesn't seem to be doing too much good, and I told the police department I've got to handle it myself. I've lost a lot of money. I brought one of the ladies carries a gun. I bought them all stun guns to protect them, and we keep our doors locked. And as you probably noticed, there's no troublesome individuals here at City Hall, the police department, the court systems, because they're all protected. But I'm not. I have to take care of myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next speaker, please.
Robert Miller regarding free telephones.
Good evening, good evening.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
As I drive around town, I notice that all these little...
Would you say your name, please, for the record?
Robert Miller.
You.
Okay. As I drive around town, I notice all these little tents around there giving away free cell phones. And I get to thinking about, there must be hundreds of those given away in Bakersfield. That means multi-thousand given away in the state of California. And I think about, who's paying for this? Well, somewhere around, I think I am. And I talked to a friend of mine, they say, well, why don't you get one? I said, I can't. Yeah, if you get Social Security, just take your little Social Security down, you get a free cell phone. I could get a free cell phone. And then I talked to another friend about it. They said, well, my friend went and got one, he got two, and he gave one to his girlfriend. My next question is, who controls these things? And then why should we be paying for it? And I know that the city council can't do anything about that, but they can certainly make some inquiries about it. And so that is my question for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Argo Chemical regarding item 8W, bid protest.
This is a city bid protest, and we submitted outlines of our bid to the clerk and the purchasing department. Do you want me to pass out outlines of our position?
You can submit that to the city clerk, please.
Is this the mic?
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Mark Rogers. I'm representing Argo Chemical. Good evening. Argo Chemical respectfully is protesting the recommendation to reject all bids for bleach on the city's bid number 171805. Argo Chemical was the lowest bidder by about $7,000. The bid requested 15% bleach strength, which is only available as 15% by volume, which equals 12.5% by weight. If rebid, the city will request the exact same product again. To explain, the following definition comes from the American Chlorine Institute, the foremost authority on bleach, which is also chemically abbreviated as NaOCl. A 15% by volume standard concentration of bleach is defined as containing 12.5% by weight. The city used a formula in its bid to ensure accurate price per weight of active ingredient, which is common in chemical bids. This requires bidder to use the correct percent by weight concentration in that formula. If there were any lack of clarity or flaws made by the city in its bid specifications, they were minor and did not affect the bid. Bidders understood how to make all required calculations, and all did so except for one non-responsive bidder. 3 of 4 bidders were responsive and accurately completed the bid. 3 proposals were consistent and clearly defined the product. The fact that no bidder requested clarification within the specific time allotted for clarification in the request for bid supports the fact that the bid was not unclear and not flawed. The fact that just 1 bidder was non-responsive in its bid calculation, with 3 bidders accurately responding, should not invalidate the clearly responsive bids made by those 3 bidders. If you allow the precedent to be set, then future bids can be undermined by future non-responsive bidders. Further, in the city's contract requirements, item number 8, the city states that before submitting, bidders should verify any representations made by the city. No bidders requested verification, confirming there was no lack of clarity or flawed information in the city's bid. And the city states that no bidder shall at any time after submission make any claim that, that there was any misunderstanding or lack of information regarding the nature of the work. So no claim of lack of clarity or flawed or misunderstood information can be made. The city states that corrections or modifications after closing time will not be accepted, and by rebidding gives the non-responsive bidder an opportunity to revise their bid. The decision is warranted and the city benefits by awarding to Argo Chemical, a Bakersfield City business, as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and as the lowest of all bidders, whether responsive or not. So our request is that the city that we reject the recommendation to reject all bids and make the award, excuse me, to Argo Chemical the lowest responsible bidder.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under Workshops, item A, Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, Senate Bill Number 1, Implementation Plan Overview.
Thank you. Mr. Fiddler?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director. Give me 1 second. Tonight I'll be presenting the 2017 Transportation Funding Package. An overview: in April 28, 2017, Senate Bill 1, referred to as SB 1, Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, was signed into law. SB 1 establishes the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account. SB 1 will be funded by an increase in per gallon fuel exercise tax, diesel fuel sales tax, and vehicle registration fees. Legislation provides for inflationary adjustments to tax rates in future years. The RMRA will provide an average of $5.2 billion annually over the next decade for California's transportation system. The following are priorities and examples of uses of funds generated by SB 1. Road maintenance, rehabilitation, and critical safety projects on both state highways and local streets and road systems. The funds can also be used for match requirements for state and federal funds for road systems, and other items such as safety projects, railroad grade separations, complete street components, and traffic control devices. It's estimated that the city will receive approximately $86 million over the next 10 years from SB 1. The estimate for fiscal year 17-18 is $2.1 million. This reflects partial year funding, since many of the new revenue sources will not be implemented until November of 2017. For fiscal year 18-19, we're estimated to receive $6.4 million. In addition, we anticipate receiving the first monthly apportionment of the RMRA funds in mid-January of 2018. The California Transportation Committee has developed guidelines for the use of the SB 1 funds. The guidelines require that, went too far. Require a council approval of projects proposed to be funded with RMRA funds. This is scheduled for the September 20th, 2017 council meeting. The city must electronically submit project lists to the CTC by October 16, 2017. The city must comply with specific annual reporting requirements to promote transparency. Also, the city must sustain maintenance of effort, MOE. The maintenance of effort is agency must sustain MOE by spending at least the annual average of its general fund expenditures during fiscal years 2009, 10, 2010-11, and 2011-12 for street, road, and highway purposes. It's estimated that our annual MOE for the base period was $16.6 million. That means moving forward, we have to at least achieve a $16.6 million every year as part of this program. The city continues to meet this level and exceeding it. The Finance Department will annually monitor the MOE compliance. SB1 specific as how funds can be used. The goal of SB1 is to bring the PCI Pavement Condition Index for each agency to 80% or better. Agencies may spend its RMRA apportionment on transportation priorities other than priorities outlined in legislation if the agency's PCI reaches 80%. The citywide PCI average is currently 66%. The city's pavement management system will help allow the city to monitor the progress. There are additional one-time revenues in the first 3 years of SB1. SB1 provides for the repayment of transportation funds which were previously borrowed by the state. Their payment will be made in 3 equal payments. The city's annual loan repayment for fiscal year 17-18 is $433,774. The loan repayments are not subject to SB1 guidelines and are not to be expended in the same manner as the city's existing sales tax. Staff is proposing to use the $2.1 million for fiscal year 17 on the following: $738,000 or $739,000 for local match for federal projects. Currently, local match is funded with capital outlay funds. This $739,000 will free up capital outlay funds. $290,000 will be for resurfacing work on Wilson Road from State Route 99 to Railroad, and $1.1 million for additional roadway improvements which will be completed by our Streets Division. This is a list of the projects that are proposed by the Streets Division. Allen Road from Olive Drive to Reyna Road, Bernard Street from Union Avenue to Kern Street, Campus Park Drive from Old River Road to Buena Vista Road, Miramonte Drive from State Route 178 south to city limits, and South Half Moon Drive from Ash Road to Edgemont Drive. This is a total of $1.7 million. Cost over the available SB1 funding will be covered by the Streets Division's annual CIP resurfacing budget. The loan repayment of just over $433,000 for fiscal year 17-18 will be spent on Monitor Street from Fairview Road to White Lane. Again, cost above the available funding of the loan repayment will come out of the Streets Division CIP resurfacing budget. This slide provides the proposed uses for the capital outlay funding that was freed up from the SB1 funds. Again, this is $739,000. The city will replace citywide tree replacement in the total of $560,000. A Rabobank Arena radio upgrade is $75,000. Sound wall landscaping improvements on on 99 near Hosking Avenue, $60,000. And the Hosking Avenue State Route 99 interchange bridge rail improvements. Now I'm going to turn it over to Diane Hoover with Recreation and Parks.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief overview of the $500,000 that are available for tree replacement. In 2013, the drought started in the city of Bakersfield and throughout California. The state mandated reduction in watering to 36% less water, and 3 days a week took a toll on our city's trees and park trees. It severely impacted the coastal redwoods and also liquid ambers, flowering plum, and white alder. Total trees removed in the last 3 years, 2,880 trees. So that's all through the irrigation reductions, the high temperatures we had, and in addition, since the trees were stressed from the high heat and less water, they had insect infestations as well. So this shows the chart of how many trees were removed in each of the fiscal years. And last year, fiscal year, we removed 2,066, and that was through city crews as well as the street tree contract that we had. This chart shows the city, if you kind of picture the city divided in half through 99 north and south and Stockdale Highway east and west, and where the trees, the higher concentration of the trees removed were. A lot of the design of the streets on the west side, northwest and southwest, are more in a grid system as opposed to the ones on the east side. And that's why there's a big difference here. And plus, there's a lot of county property on the east side compared to the west side. So our proposed replacement would be equal to the removals in percentage-wise. So you can see the different quadrants and where we plan to replace the total of 1,700 trees with the $560,000 that we have available. So what we'll do is we will plant drought-tolerant trees such as Chinese pistache, and we've already started this throughout the city, live oak, crepe myrtle, and Chinese elm. We will prioritize the plantings in the high-traffic medians such as Stockdale, Ming, White Lane, Hageman, the high-traffic streets areas. And then replanting can begin once the money is available and once the high heat subsides a little bit, and we can start planting this fall and into the winter. And if we have extremely wet season, we'll continue throughout the spring next year. So the timeline then is the next budget meeting. There will be an amendment to appropriate the projects proposed through streets and through the trees. And then the budget amendment also to transfer the COF funds currently appropriated as local match for federal projects. Mr. Fiddler and I are available for any questions you might have on any of the information presented.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover. Mr. Fiddler, any comments from council? Councilmember Rivera? No, Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Diane, it is shocking to hear the number of trees that have been affected. And still, out where I live, I can still see quite a few that are dead. Will you continue to remove the ones that are dead?
Yes.
And
Mayor Go, Councilmember Sullivan, Council, we will continue to do that. We have the tree contract still in place, and we'll continue to do that. Unfortunately, this past weekend, we lost a number of trees in the streets and the parks, and so we'll have a full report on that once we're done. We'll be removing trees for about 2 more weeks on the storm damage alone.
That was shocking. Yes, and on Acres Road, just right where I live, the sump that we have there are quite a few dead trees there, so you'll be getting to them. And Diane, now were you saying that then you will start replacing them? Oh, that's right, with the types of trees that you mentioned. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivera?
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you both for the presentation. I think it's welcome news that, seems to be a rarity, we're actually getting something from the state in this particular case, which I think is fantastic. And there's obviously a huge need on Bakersfield streets. So I think it could really be put to good use. I'm curious about the 739,000 that's been freed up from the capital outlay fund to do what we just talked about. And it went quickly. Could you give me the slide again that broke out what we were doing with what staff was proposing? That one. So, are there restrictions on what the $739,000 can be used for?
There is, no, there's no restriction because it's a repayment of a loan. The other, I'm sorry, these are capital outlay funds, not part of the SB1. So
So they could otherwise be rolled into the general fund for really any purpose?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Rivera, these are generally one-time in nature type funds. So they're essentially, we would like to keep them in the capital outlay fund for one-time type of projects.
But they can be used for any type of one-time projects?
Essentially, there's no restrictions on the use of these funds specifically. These are projects that were brought to us in priority from different departments, and I believe also some requests as well from the council.
Okay. I don't want to put the cart before the horse because I know I know it's later on in the agenda, but I'm looking at the staff report, and it doesn't necessarily give me a dollar amount associated with the rate increases that we're considering today. Could you help me understand what 16%, 13%, and 7.6% would actually reflect dollar-wise on the City of Bakersfield's water rates? And here, this is the reason I'm asking. I think it's a great idea to go back and start replacing and replanting trees we've lost, and I believe in that absolutely. It's something I'm always jealous of other cities for. I'm just curious whether or not it also at the same time makes sense to potentially weigh that decision against potentially utilizing those dollars for one other one-time offset. And for example, and potentially offsetting the rate increases we're considering this evening. So that's the only reason I'm asking. And if we can't answer that question now, I might suggest, I wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable approving or directing staff that we move forward in spending that money as it's being proposed right now.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Rivera, this evening we're not asking for any action, and so we can certainly get you that information and get back to you. I would say, though, that historically we have not ever used, I don't believe, capital outlay to otherwise support or fund anything in the enterprise fund or in the water fund, which is paid for in its own separate fund by the users for that service, and that's how it's designed and set up. And so I don't know that I've ever been asked that question before, so we'd have to take a look at that, but I don't know that it could be done.
Okay.
Just to clarify, though, tonight is just a receive and file.
Okay.
If you want to go to the very last slide, please, Mr. Vidler, and that'll just clarify it. So I think staff was just indicating to you that the budget amendment to appropriate will be at the next meeting. And so, Councilman Rivera, if Mr. Huot can, I'm sure that he will address your questions in the admin for the next meeting.
Okay, that'd be great. That's the water rate increases is, I think, just, it's one example. I think there is a long list of things that I'd certainly consider very important that might be one-time expenditures that this council might think was a priority as well. So I'd be curious on that answer. Thank you.
Anyone else from the council? Thank you very much, Mr. Fidler. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar items 8A through 8AD for approval. A staff memorandum has been received regarding item 8W, transmitting copies of 2 bid protests and staff's response.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Does any council member wish to recuse themselves from any items on the consent calendar? Seeing none, does any council member wish to take off an item for separate consideration from the consent calendar? Yes. Councilmember Weir?
If we could have a little discussion on item 8W, please.
Okay, great. Any others? Councilmember Rivera.
Could I ask that we consider item F separately as well, please? Thank you.
Okay. That being all, I would make a motion to approve consent calendar items 8A through 8AD with the exception of 8W and 8F.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item. 8F.
Public hearing on resolution of necessity.
Madam Clerk, we actually need to go back to 8F. I thought you were just going to announce that. So, Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question. This is related, this is a resolution authorizing a payment not to exceed $1.5 million to the San Joaquin APCD for the implementation of voluntary emissions reduction agreement for the Centennial Corridor project. I was hoping staff could clarify. In the end, staff's recommending approval of the resolution, and it states that sufficient federal and local funds are budgeted to make this payment. There is no general fund impact associated with this request. I'm curious if you can tell me what federal and local funds are being utilized to meet that, to make that payment.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Rivera, this is part of this, as stated, this is part of the Centennial Corridor. The federal funds are from the matches, the earmarks for the Centennial Corridor. So we started the first project, which is the Kern River Bridge improvements. As part of that, we were required to pay these mitigation measures, and the payment is eligible for federal reimbursement. So we will be using those earmarks for the Centennial Corridor to make that payment.
Okay, so eligible for federal reimbursement, but then ultimately we are responsible for that federal earmark though at some point, correct? Or
no,
it's
paid.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. That answers my question. I'll move approval of the resolution. Thank you.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Now let's go back to 8W. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. We had very little information on this in our packet, and I think this memorandum came while we were in closed session. So I'm wondering if maybe we could get a little explanation of what happened on this item. 8W.
Mayor Go, Councilman Weir, Nelson Smith, Finance Director. I may need some help from Public Works Director, but this item was originally on your agenda at the previous council meeting in August. At that time, staff had reviewed the bids that were received. Staff determined that there was only one responsive bidder and the other three had not been responsive. Before that item came to you, we received the first protest, which basically said, we think the city's wrong, we think you got it backwards. So we had the item pulled off the agenda for the last meeting, so there was no action taken. After talking with staff, we determined that the bid specs were confusing and we thought we should just start over. And so that's what's before you this evening is to reject all bids and start the process over. because in my opinion, the bid specs were confusing. It's a very complicated formula, and in actuality, the request for product wasn't even going to be in the quantity, or the request for product was structured inappropriately, because the invoices we're paying right now are in gallons, and this really complicated formula just, I didn't understand it, and staff agrees that it really should just be redone, put in gallons, it can be much more simple. So the item before you tonight is to reject the bid, start the process over. I understand that, so the protest you heard this evening is the second protest on the same item, saying we disagree with staff, we think you should just award it to the person who's protesting, who believes there was no confusion. And again, my opinion is I think we should just start over.
Mr. Fiddler.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member Weir, as Nelson, Mr. Smith has indicated, there was vagueness in the bid specs. There was no unit of measure for the bidders to determine whether it was 15% by volume or 15% by weight. And then also the billing does play into a significant portion of how we would award the project and then invoice the project. So we needed that clarification in order for us to properly approve the bid and structure payment invoices to the responsive low bidder.
Okay. So, but we did get one responsive bid the first time?
We received 4 bids. City staff determined that one of the 4 was responsive and the other 3 were not.
Okay.
Upon further review,
And at that time, we got a protest on that one?
yes, we got a protest from one of the 3 we determined were non-responsive. After reviewing their protest in detail, city staff determined that we had made a mistake,
Okay.
and that the original analysis was flawed.
Say, so we're just going to redo the bid specs and send it out and
Yes,
let everybody take their best shot?
yes.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll make the motion to approve this.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
May Argo Chemical rebut that statement?
No, that's not appropriate at this point. You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar public hearings.
As the clerk said, this is the time for our consent calendar public hearing items. Tonight, there are 7 items on this part of the agenda, 6 of which deal with acquisitions of land for a trip. Each item is listed by the address on the agenda. The purpose of this section is to vote on all of the items listed under consent calendar hearings in one motion without further comment. If anyone would like to speak on any of the hearing items listed, the item must be removed from this portion of the agenda. If an item is removed, it will be placed at the end of the regular public hearings portion of the meeting. At this time, I'll open consent calendar public hearing items 9A through 9G. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to request that a hearing item be removed from the consent calendar? If so, please come forward. This isn't the time to take testimony, only to remove the item to remove the matter from the consent calendar hearings.
The water increase, 9A.
9A.
Mayor, go.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public? Does any council member wish to remove an item from the... Yes, sir?
9A, the water increase?
Yes, we already have 9A removed. Thank you. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar hearing? At this time, consent calendar public hearings item 9B through 9G are now closed. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent calendar public hearing items 9B through 9G.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Before I open the public hearings, I'll go over the presentation time policy. Each side is allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers. So it's important that you identify yourself and make your statement quickly so that others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to the staff recommendation. Then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in favor of the staff recommendation. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the wall behind me, which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and after 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash, indicating that your time is up, and at that point, please quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be answered until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statements, please give those to the clerk and she'll provide copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. So unless there's approval by the majority of the City Council, there's a strict 15-minute time limit for all those in favor or in opposition to staff's recommendation. So please be concise, avoid repeating the remarks of the previous speakers. Madam Clerk, please read the first public hearing item.
Public hearing on resolution adopting increases in water rates to the City of Bakersfield's domestic water service area. Notices were mailed to affected 42,045 customers regarding this item. A total of 144 letters and 3 phone calls in opposition to the water rate increase have been received.
Thank you. How many people would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Would you raise your hands, please? Okay, would you all just come up to the front, actually just line up here on the side, please? Just right over here, and we'll have the first speaker, if you can come up to the microphone. There's 15-minute total, and please introduce yourself and then proceed.
Honorable Mayor, if you don't mind, we
Oh, I'm sorry.
do have a brief staff report if you would like.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. That might be helpful, so if you would all just sit right in their area, and we'll stay in the same order in which you came up. So go ahead, and we'll keep it right in this order, wherever you're standing. If you want to remain standing, that's fine too. We'll remember the order. So there's going to be a brief staff report first, and then we will hear from the public, please. And you'll be first, sir, who just sat down.
Thank you for bringing up the presentation, and Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Art Cianello, Water Resources Manager for the City of Bakersfield. Just to give a brief background on the subject that we're here tonight on. As you can see before us, we are actively trying to face a new maximum contaminant limit for a chemical that's in the groundwater. It was recently adopted in July by the Department of Drinking Water. It's called 123 TCP. And the limit, the safe drinking water limit on, or the concentration on this chemical is very, very low at 5 parts per trillion. We've discovered and studied that the best methodology to remove this chemical from the groundwater is through implementing equipment that contains granular activated carbon. So out of a total of about 64, 65 wells we have in the City of Bakersfield domestic water service area, we have 41 that have concentrations of TCP. And so now that this new rule has been in place, we have to start monitoring, actively sampling and monitoring and complying with the new regulations starting in January of 2018. So we're under a very short time schedule to implement a project, and we've defined a project on these 41 wells to install a number of vessels using granular activated carbon to take out the TCP. We've estimated that the construction costs for this effort will be around $55 million for the capital costs, and then on top of that, we'll have recurring escalated operation and maintenance costs. Up until this time, we've gone to council several times to ask to award contracts to help us get this contract going, and that was primarily to get us through the design and study phase. And we do have some funds in fund balance that we've been using to get us up to this point. However, we don't have enough money. We'll need to borrow some money. And so the borrowing part of it, we work closely with the finance director, Mr. Smith, to figure out a plan on borrowing the money so we can finance our project of the $55 million. And that resulted in a workshop that we gave to City Council approximately 45 days ago that resulted in 3 phases of a rate increase. Let's see. For example, on June 7th of 2017, City Council awarded $8.3 million from the Water Enterprise Fund so we can start fabrication of the granular activated vessels, which would help us meet our timeline. On June 20th, staff completed an RFP process to go with a special rate consultant, and that was the report that we gave to council about what the proposed rate increases should be. Recently, on June 28th, City Council approved in Phase 1, an earlier phase, with our design build contractor, WM Lyles, for an amount of approximately $1.3 million to keep the design and early procurement of materials going forward so we can continue on with our construction process. So here's our budget. Phase 1, we have approximately 27 wells. Phase 2, 14 wells, for a total of 41 impacted wells, or an estimate of approximately $55 million, and that's just for the capital costs. Then on top of that, there'll be expected increased operation and maintenance costs going forward. We did have some cash on hand that funded some of our early procurement, but ultimately we'll have to borrow money. And if there's any further detailed questions on that, the finance director, I'm sure, can help us out in giving us further details. Just this map here I wanted to show, in that the area that we're talking about for the potential rate increase is this lighter greened area, basically west of Stein Road, and that's where the Proposition 218 letters were sent to. I think there was 42,000, close to 42,000 letters that were sent out, and it was for the City of Bakersfield domestic water system. You'll see that there's several other domestic water systems that serve Bakersfield, and they are impacted to some degree or other with groundwater contamination and TCP. They have their own plans on how to mitigate that and how to finance that as well. So the area that we'll be talking about tonight is just for this green, lighter green area, which is the City of Bakersfield domestic service area. Again, this is in the admin report tonight, but the recommendations, and this was in the Proposition 218 notice also, we're looking at a 16% rate increase in October of 17, a 13% increase in July of 18, and then another 7.6 in July of 2019. And if you add them up, it doesn't get to 40%, but when you look at the compounding effect year after year, it gets closer to about 40% impact. So what would that mean for an average user now in the City of Bakersfield domestic water system? based on what we're seeing as the average user under the current rate of approximately $36.20 per month. If all three increases were implemented as shown, the ultimate bill would be approximately $50.89. And what we're just showing here is a comparison of some of the other urban water purveyors within Bakersfield. On a larger scale, in what we call some of our other sister cities throughout California, you can look at some of their other water rates that are out there. And so even with the increase, we would still be very competitive with the other cities within California. And also with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions now or a little bit later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chianella. Councilmember Freeman.
Mr. Chianello, have these, has this already been bid out? So we know very accurately the cost, this 50 to whatever $1 million. So there's no chance that with full bid and build out that this would come down, the cost?
Actually, we have what we call a maximum price that we recently got from the design build contractor. And so the way that the contract will be written, and we'll be bringing this contract to council in a future city council meeting, there is a what they call the guaranteed maximum price. But yes, it could be less than that if they find cost savings in the field, or maybe it takes less time to install some equipment than originally budgeted for. So we have a guaranteed maximum price, but depending on how construction goes over the next 18 months, yes, it can be less than that.
Are there any incentives for this, the contractor, to realize any of the savings?
I think so. I think some of the savings that we, Councilmember Freeman, is that he needs is the speed of the project, and that in itself lends to efficiency. There's liquidated damages if he doesn't meet these deadlines, and so he does have an incentive to work efficiently to meet them. And so we'll be also working with him very closely, working with the contractor very closely to make sure that decisions are made in the field quickly, that we're never holding up the contractor, that we're making him go as quickly as possible. So we want to work with him to make sure he's efficient and he gets his, street permits quickly and other things quickly, so he's not held up and doesn't incur any extra costs.
Okay. One final question. If they do realize some savings, does that mean one of these future rate increases would be reduced to reflect that savings?
I believe the answer to that is yes. The way the administration report is written tonight is that council is being asked to approve what could be the ultimate maximum amount, but depending on how things go over the next 12, 18 months, quite frankly, with construction costs, and also with maybe there could be legal settlements that will bring in some money as well. Those costs can be less. So we are not looking at fixed rates of, let's say the next rate is 13% in July of 2018. We would look at our costs, what's needed to pay the debt payment, reassess it at that time. We can't exceed 13%, but most certainly we can be less than that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Art, for the presentation. So you just mentioned the possibility of success on the litigation front. I was curious if someone could describe what's occurring there, what the likelihood is of cities and local jurisdictions actually being able to recover anything.
There, Councilmember Rivera, There's not much I can tell you in a public session regarding that, other than the city does, along with its co-partner Cal Water, we have a active litigation against Dow Chemical as well as Shell Oil. It's been on file since March of 2008. We are proceeding to trial, but we do not have a trial date yet. And one of the interesting facts about our particular case is that our case has the highest number of contaminated wells, and it's proceeding on what's called a coordinated basis. And so the court is taking one case at a time. So that is one of the reasons why our case has taken so long to really reach finality, is because the court is taking other cities and other counties with a lesser number of wells. Between the city and Cal Water, I believe the number of claimed wells is approaching 150, whereas some jurisdictions simply have a handful. And again, as Mr. Chianello indicated, if we do receive proceeds from the litigation, it's my understanding that the bonds are being structured in such a way that we can allow early payoff without penalty.
Okay, any sense of so if we're closer up to the front of the line, any sense of how quickly something might actually be resolved, or is that pretty gray as well?
I am not at liberty to discuss that in an open session.
Okay. Okay. So is there a reason why we have structured the rate increases in such a way that it's 1, 2, and 3 year increases, and why given that so many things it's possible things might change, I don't know how quickly, why we would adopt or give staff direction for freedom to do 3 years worth of rate increases rather than doing this each year and kind of reassessing where we are each year.
Mayor Go and Councilmember Rivera, I'll probably answer half of this and defer to the finance director, but I believe it's being prudent to do it this way rather than one larger increase because of the unknowns of potential revenues from litigation or savings in construction costs, knowing that 13% in July of 2018 could be potentially less depending on how things go. And so I think this offered more flexibility and was be able to protect making sure that we could afford to pay the bond debt without having to have a rate increase that might have been too large. So it gave us some flexibility and to be conservative there. But
okay.
Perhaps I'll allow.
Maybe Mr. Smith can answer this question. Is it great trouble and expense to do small bond issuances on a year-by-year basis, or is this approach the best way to move forward?
Mayor Go, Councilmember Rivera, we actually are doing incremental bond issuance. So this first issue is to give us enough bond proceeds to do the first 27 wells.
Okay.
We're anticipating a second bond issue about a year from now to do the remaining 14.
Okay.
So the reason the rate increases are staggered is just like Mr. Chianello said, is to provide us some flexibility in case there is some sort of settlement or in case the actual construction costs come in lower or the actual operating maintenance costs come in lower, we can adjust the future rate increases. But in order to do the borrowing to complete the transaction, we have to show to the rating agencies and to the investing public that we're willing to set rates at a level sufficient to cover the cost of the entire project.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a worst-case scenario. We're not going to charge rates any higher than this, but they could be lower if certain things happen. But we have to approve the rates in its entirety over the life of this project, which is about 18 months or so, to guarantee to the people who want to loan us the money, the bond issuers, that we can in fact repay the debt.
Okay. All right. So is it safe to assume that I understood the bonds stipulate or don't have issues with early repayment and stipulate that we could potentially, or we have an understanding that if we get proceeds from litigation or something else, we can use that to repay the bonds. Is there an understanding that we might also do that to potentially, I don't want to say, well, I guess there's no other way to say it, but do you see us being in a position to actually refund people at any point, or is that highly unlikely? And she can't answer.
Mayor, Councilmember Rivera, I would say at this point that's highly unlikely.
Okay, it seems fair. Okay. I guess I just have one last question, and it's for Mr. Chianello. This rate increase doesn't actually affect anyone in Ward 1, does it?
That is correct. I believe your ward is not included in this rate increase.
So for the first time and probably the only point in my life, I'm going to say, thank God I live in Cal Water's jurisdiction. So kudos to you guys. I know I gave you a hard time earlier, but you know, that's a blessing for the folks that live in my district that we're not being strapped with this. So I guess that's an issue for the folks sitting to my left. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would like to say to the mayor and the council that I'd be more than happy to give a full report and come back in front of council before July of 2018 on that next proposed 13% increase to give an update on where we are exactly and how we are tracking with costs, and if there's been other developments on litigation, to see if we're tracking at 13% or a lower number. And I'd be happy to give council a report prior to that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chianello. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Art, I don't care who you are. I think a 40% increase is kind of a tough pill to swallow. And you definitely need water to do it, I would think. But I don't think anybody up here would really wants to do this. It really falls under the state mandates. That's correct, correct?
That is correct. I mean, if we don't do this, we will not be in compliance with the state mandates because we can't roll out the equipment and the construction project quick enough to keep ourselves within compliance. And that compliance is coming from the state.
And what happens if we don't meet these mandates?
We will be out of compliance. The state will consider us out of compliance. They'll ask us and meet with us often and ask us to put together an action plan on how long will it take you to get into compliance. The answer will be, well, we'll have to outfit 41 wells, and it'll cost approximately $55 million in order to do that. The other thing is, obviously, we'll have to notify all the people that we're not meeting our drinking water standards. The taps won't be shut off, but we'll have to let the elected officials know and the people within our district who are drinking the water that we are not meeting full drinking water standards.
If we don't meet the mandates, can it affect us financially, or could there be any fines or penalties?
I think, and I might defer to the city attorney, that I think they would work with us first, but I would say that's not out of the question. We've never been fined before, so I'm a little bit of a loss to know how exactly that process would go. I think they would want to work with us first, but sure, I think so, being a big city, if we are consistently out of compliance, I would presume there could be some fines in there, and I don't want to assume too much right now.
Okay, and also in line with Councilman Rivera's statement, Ward 7 is not included in this, correct?
Yeah, I look backwards because whenever we do our admin reports for water, we try and make sure we get all the right councils. There's a little bit of Ward 7, I believe, within the district, but a small amount is.
I would like a clarification on that. I don't think there is, but there has been notices going around Ward 7 on mailboxes, and I just want to make sure that, and in fact, if Cal Water could clarify that, I'd sure appreciate it. Do you happen to know, Mike?
A little bit, yeah.
Mr. Morris, can you come up to the microphone and address the council member's question, please?
That was really why I spoke in the public comments, was to talk about some of the folks from Ward 1, Ward 7, for example, that are a little stressed and concerned. We're getting a lot of calls and emails, a lot of social media hits, concerned about a rate increase in their area. And that's why I wanted to clarify the boundaries of where this rate increase is taking place, which Art did an excellent job of, and I appreciate that. So that was the whole point of my earlier comment. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't believe that Ward 7 is affected, and if you just follow up with me later and let me know. The map might have it there. So.
Okay, sure, well, I'll follow up with you later, Councilmember Parlier. This is the map right now. I don't know if we could readily tell quickly if your ward is a part of this or not. It's my understanding there's a small part of your ward in there, but I'd be happy to follow up with you later.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivera.
So, just one clarifying question, because I liked Councilmember Parlier's line of thinking regarding what happens if we don't do anything. I guess that begs the question, or I'm curious, if we've been drinking this water now for quite some time, is there a real risk associated with what is, okay, TCP 123? Go ahead, Ms. Gennaro.
Yes, Mayor, council members, there is a risk. We do not want to fall below federal and state drinking guidelines. It has been shown to be a cancer-induced contamination, which is the grounds for our lawsuit. And we need that contamination cleaned up by those companies that are responsible for putting it into our aquifer.
Thank you. Let's go. Thank you, Mr. Chianello. Let's go back to the public now. And if you can just stay in the same order in which you first came up, introduce yourself and proceed. And remember, we have 15 minutes total for all of you who are in opposition to staff's recommendation.
I'll be quick, Mayor Go, and council members. My name is Richard Holcraft. I'm with the Bakersfield Tea Party. I'm here mainly to question. Nobody wants tainted water, obviously, but this rate increase of 40% is not occurring in a vacuum. You just indicated the road, the gasoline taxes, the vehicle registration taxes, things are going up all the time. This is a big slug to take for anybody, especially people that are retired on a fixed income. I wonder how long this TCP has been in our water, and what are the health consequences to us. The city or someone, Cal Water, needs to notify the people that have been drinking this stuff. I wonder if the project can be done more cheaply. When I look at Cal Water's website, I see no 2017 water tests at all. So I'm wondering about that. Have all 41 sources been checked? I'm wondering, too, if the rate of TCP goes below 5 parts per trillion, will we start getting a reduction in the rates? Is that set to be done? And one thing I noticed in this testimony here, 14 wells are not going to be done right away if they have TCP. These people that are getting water from those wells should be notified. That's my comments.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, in opposition to staff's recommendation. Just come on down in the order in which you lined up.
Your Honor, Governor and council members, I actually came down here because I have family and friends that own houses. I no longer own a house.
Please introduce yourself and say your name.
My name is Richard Felix. Somehow they didn't show up, but I did, because I'm still passionate about this. I used to live on Beach and 24th Street, which is now, my house is going to be evolved or dissolved from the 24th Street widening. But just hearing the comments, I was senior project estimator in the oil and gas industry for 15 years, and just hearing some of the exasperated costs of what are these are frontline costs. These are not realistic costs. These are costs that you guys get to hear so that they get justified. But the reality is, I was the guy that actually put numbers to all of the 3 miles of pipeline, whether it was Schedule 80 pipe, line pipe, interline pipe, epoxy line pipe, cement line piped, fiber spar, which is a fiberglass line. I did all the math and all that to run these, whether it was above ground, on pipe supports, everything. And just hearing some of the numbers of what the cost is, it was a good sell. And I also learned in my 15 years of being an estimator that the engineers that design these pipelines and these processes, they get a commission on how much they exasperate what they use for the type of A316 steel for something really that just needs 80-31.5, which costs twice the amount. But they get paid on the cost of what that engineered price is. And I really didn't come here to even talk about that until I started hearing some numbers, and it really kind of just upset me, because if a proposed project was $10 billion, I could do it for $900 million. It was just really that big of a drastic difference because of the difference that the engineers got compensated on what they were getting paid for the products that they recommended. You go out there with the inspector says, that's not what's scoped out. Does it work? Yes, it works, and it's 3/4 the price less. So, back your thought for you guys to know what cost really is on engineering stuff. Another thing was, as a senior estimator, it wasn't the top guy that got the bid, it wasn't the lowest guy that got the bid, because the top guy was raping, the bottom guy was not including everything, it was the middle guy that really actually had all his ducks covered, and he's the one that really took care of it. Last thing I would probably say is, we're so longer, so to speak, I guess, not in a drought no more. And again, I don't own a house no more. I rent a room. My utilities are flat rate, fortunately for the woman I rent a room from. I'm having the mindset of a homeowner with multiple homes that I used to own, and if we're trying to reduce the reduction of water, and everybody's drying up their lawns and the trees are dying, and now we're increasing all the bug beetles that are destroying the trees, and then we're going to increase across the water, and everyone's trying to do that, and everyone, sounds like everyone's doing a pretty good deal across the board, but we're going to charge you more as you reduce your use more. But we still want you to actually maintain your trees so that the bug beetles don't destroy them, so there's no fires, so there's no devastation when something just happens. And I go both sides with this because I understand there's a balance. I just don't want something to happen that you're going to have people totally shut off all their water for their entire front and back lawns, the trees, and then you have nothing but just someone that's going to flick a cigarette out, and that house went up, and it's going to light up an entire neighborhood. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
How many people still would like to speak in opposition? 1, 2, 3. And we have about 7 minutes and 58 seconds left. So if you just be considerate of the time that we have left. Next speaker, and then the gentleman in the blue. Please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, my name is James Langille, And I have been involved in this process for a while. I've been aware of the TCP issue for quite a few years now. It's not new. It's not new to me. I mean, public knowledge of it is fairly new. It's been around since the 70s, as many of you know. They've been using it in the agricultural industry. We ourselves, we've been in the lawsuit since 2008, you mentioned. And now we're finally doing something about it, which is great, because I don't want my child to be drinking poison water. I'm happy that we're doing this. My concern is that we that have been poisoned for years are footing the bill for this. And that, I think we can all agree, is ridiculous. Yeah. I understand we're in litigation to recoup some of that money. I don't see how we're not going to get all of our money back. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. If we're being poisoned and we're getting having to do all this work to get this poison out of the system, how is the people that are being poisoned the ones that have to pay for it? We've known about this, the danger of this, since I think the 90s is something when the studies were put out. We've known about it. We've been testing it. We've known it's been in our water, and yet we've done nothing until there was a mandate. And then, I hear the Cal Water guy, he's saying, are you guys having a rate increase? You're not. So how come I'm having a rate increase? You guys are cleaning up TCP, aren't you? You're installing granulated carbon, right? Why aren't your people paying more? I'd like to hear about that.
You need to address your comments to the council, please.
Okay. Then I would just like some answers about that. I feel like there's some mismanagement going on. Something is not right.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
During the 2007-2008 financial crisis,
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Johnny Olaguez, I actually Ward 2, I believe, or the little green area up there. I don't know where that's at. So during the 2007-2008 financial crisis, we bailed out a bunch of banks. $700 billion later, we foot the bill for that. And when I saw this $58 million, it seemed absurd to me because, as I don't know, I mean, people are aware, but Cal Water is a publicly traded company. You can check the stock online. So when I noticed that, I thought, so we're giving a publicly traded company and their shareholders $58 million so that they can come and help us out over something that someone else did. It's just this huge mess. So I think that I just don't think that it's something that's justified or something that the citizens of Bakersfield should be responsible for. In 2009, my dad had a trucking company. The California Air Resource Board came down on him and said, hey, you need to buy new trucks. Well, he got sick, so he had to spend all his savings on his health. Well, because of that, he lost some contracts, but fortunately he got to keep some others. So what I'm trying to say is, as a business owner, as somebody who has dealt with that, I feel like that's something that either Cal Water should figure out or wait until the responsible parties, in this case Exxon or whoever the case is against, gets cleared. I just not for the $58 million proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. And you've decided not to speak in the back. Is there anybody else who would you like to speak? Okay. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Viola Gallegos, and I'm Your Honorable Mayor and the ward members. I'm kind of nervous speaking.
That's okay. We're always all nervous, so just go ahead. You're doing fine.
I agree with everybody, and I'm a taxpayer and a homeowner, and I just opposed to it, and because, like all the other speakers, I agree with them. Whatever has taken place is taking place, and I'm just wondering, every time we turn around, something else goes up, something else goes down, and our income stays the same, and we just can't afford so much. So I thank you all for your letting me speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? One more? We have about 3 minutes left for opposition.
Hi, my name is Jean-Claude Bonillo, and I'm protesting the rate increase in the water company. We're being held responsible for somebody else's mess, and I think we've known about TCP forever. This is nothing new, and I think that the rate increase should not go through, and the water company has got enough money to take care of that problem, and that's part of why we pay them to take care of us, and I say we no more increase in the rates.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Please introduce yourself.
Hello, yeah, my name is Jaime Haro, and yeah, I'm over here to protest against the water rate, which I understand, sometimes the city doesn't got the funds to keep going. But this time, where I live, there's a lot of water flooding the street, not even take care of the problem. I mean, if we're here to protect the water, how come nobody see those problems? And I think it's other things, they keep be considered before they raise the price on the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it now to council for comment and action. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Art, if you could come back, please. The public had a few comments and questions, and I just want to clarify a few things with you. And a couple of the gentlemen alluded to more or less conservation efforts of our water usage and stuff. And just to clarify, this really has nothing to do with conservation efforts. This has to do with removing TCP contaminants. Is that correct?
Councilmember Parlier, that is correct. I did hear conservation comments as well, and perhaps the connection of that with higher water rates. In this case, this is strictly for the quality of the drinking water.
And before the state environmental mandates or Sacramento environmental mandates that has been pushed down to us, the prior TCP levels, were they considered safe by the state until this new mandate?
Councilmember Parlier and Mayor, I think a better way to answer that question would be, and I think it answers some of the comments of the speakers, is that it has only been recently that the state has come up with what's called the MCL, or the maximum contamination level. And it was recently that the state proposed the 5 parts per trillion and then actually adopted the 5 parts per trillion. Prior to that time, if it was below that, it met federal and state drinking standards, period, end of discussion. We now have the MCL. We are now required to meet the MCL. And I agree with a boatload of the speakers that came up. We are being held responsible for someone else's mess, and that's why we are suing Dow and Shell, and I hope all of you are on the jury. We would have loved for the state to have delayed implementation of the MCL until after all of the litigation. That would have been wonderful, but they have not done that. The state is now imposing that we meet that mandate, and we meet that mandate, I believe, by, is it January or June of 2018?
July of 2018 is where we have to start sampling for the new MCL.
Right. And so that is the reason why
January of 2018.
That is why council is in the unfortunate position that they are in right now and having to raise those rates at such a quick level.
Well, Madam City Attorney, I concur with your statements. Has Sacramento offered us any relief as far as providing monies to be able to do this? As far as
none.
Just the mandate, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve item 9A.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under new business, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of domestic water revenue bonds, Series 2017A, not to exceed $25 million in aggregate principal amount for the City of Bakersfield, California, approving a master trust indenture, a first supplemental trust indenture, preliminary and final official statements, a bond purchase contract, and a continuing disclosure certificate, and authorizing and directing additional actions in connection with respect thereto.
Mr. Smith, do you feel like your audience is left? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Go. The item before you this evening is a resolution adopting a series of legal documents authorizing the city to borrow up to $25 million. The project, as we've just discussed, is the first 27 wells for TCP treatment. The bond transaction is structured as a 25-year fixed-rate bond issue. Approximate debt service is $1.4 million annually for 25 years. There is a special provision in the bond documents. It's an extraordinary call provision. If there is a settlement of the litigation, we are allowed to use those proceeds to repay the debt without further penalty. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Council members, any questions? Do we have a motion?
I would move to approve item 13A.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council and Mayor statements.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, I had a meeting yesterday with several folks from the Kern County Historical Society, and I believe they've also met with Councilmember Gonzalez. They've got an exciting project that I'd like to ask our Public Works and Department in the City Manager's Office to follow up with them. I think there's some work to be done on outlining some sites to notate the old historic US 99. So I'm hoping staff can work with them and bring a proposal back to the council here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a request for Rec and Parks. Diane, if, with the fair starting here in the next couple of weeks, the Ming Avenue corridor, I guess the city area goes, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes just a little bit east of Chester, is that correct? So that corridor, if we could kind of clean it up, since we're going to have a lot of people, utilizing that exit to go to the fair, I want to put our best foot forward. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to once again mention the movie that was mentioned actually during the public statements. The Bakersfield premiere of this movie will be tomorrow night, starting at 7 o'clock at the Christ Cathedral Church on White Lane, and it's Victory by Submission. Actually, Alan Autry is one of the actors in the movie. He was the guest speaker for In God We Trust America in our program in July. But it's restoring a family, and it's supposed to be a very moving, powerful, just a very important story that is being very highly mentioned and rated. So anyone that would like more information can certainly call the church, call me, but it's Christ Cathedral Church on White Lane. And Alan Autry will be there promoting the movie and talking about the story and the people involved in the story. So it'll be a great evening. I plan to be there, and many of us do, so thank you.
Anyone else? Our youth Councilmember Flint Sheffield. I think you won the award for staying to the end. I don't recall any other person who's led the pledge staying to the end. Thank you for engaging with us, and thank you for your service. Is there a motion for an adjournment?
I think you usually handle
Oh,
that.
I normally do. I ought to pay attention. If there's nothing further, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.